Today we're going to look at some network security with Windows 10. So we're not going to dig too deeply again because this is not the subject for network security. This is mainly for Windows 10, but this is just one element of Windows 10. As with any other operating system, there's always the threat of security these days because all our computers and devices are just so connected. Okay. So today we're gonna, like last time, we spoke about networking. So networking was so that our Windows 10 computer can share resources with other computers on your network. But before even that, you probably already have been participating in the network, whether you realize it or not. Okay, just the fact you're connected to your home Wi-Fi network and is able to get resources from, let's say, the internet, means that you're already on a network. That's the scary thing, because you already have devices which are already networked. But what about the security side of things? Okay, so last lesson, if you like, we were getting ourselves connected with each other. This lesson is almost like the opposite. It's how we can actually stop connections from many computers. Well, at least stop the connections we don't want and allow the connections we do want. Okay. So today we're going to look at network security, just briefly, obviously, like just scratching the surface really with with security or cyber security. So today we're going to look at the Windows Firewall. Okay, it's changed its name a little bit. It's called Windows Defender with Advanced Firewall. So, and we'll look at some connection security rules, and we'll look at implementing Windows Defender. In this case, the second part is the antivirus. Well, that's a good thing. Like in the past, back in the day, yeah, I think when Windows XP was originally released, and before that, the Windows operating system never contained any security as far as firewalls and antiviruses. Okay, so these days, there shouldn't be any operating system that's in the world that doesn't contain a firewall, and should definitely be installed with an antivirus. But obviously, we all heard of antiviruses that you can buy, download, and install. But the one we're talking about is one that's actually default and shipped with Windows, the Windows operating system. Okay, so let's actually talk about what is a firewall. Okay, so if we look at this diagram, there's different types of firewalls. Okay, so if this is the internet, this is your laptop computer, and this is your internal network. Obviously, we're assuming a few things here. We're assuming that on the internet, it's full of bad guys. Not just bad guys, but bad guys with super duper expertise and skills, and they're highly motivated to get you. Sounds a bit paranoid, but that's what you have to almost assume. That people on the internet have the skills and knowledge and want to get you. So do you want to make yourself an easy target or a harder target? That's the difference. Okay, obviously easy target, it means there's more and more people that can actually just download simple tools and use them against you. Whereas if you make yourself a little bit a harder target, it means that those people with those simple tools with not too much knowledge are just not a threat anymore. Whereas it's the really serious people that can still be a threat, but that's less likely now than just your neighbor hacking into your Wi-Fi network and then snooping around your network. Okay, so that's eliminates or reduces the risk significantly just by turning on a few security measures. So let's talk about the different types of firewall in play here in this diagram. So we've all heard of the term firewall, hopefully. Okay, traditionally that was just like a device or a computer that blocks or allows traffic from the internet to your network. Okay, so you all heard of that term or have that idea in your head. That's good. In this case, there's actually two of these corporate firewalls, as we refer to them. Okay, they're not just firewalls for your individual computers. They're actually devices or computers that are actually protecting your whole network. So if we actually do a bit of a search, so for example, if you studied the diploma, we'll actually teach you FortiGate, okay? And for example, this is a hardware-based next generation firewall. Okay, and obviously if you go on to study the diploma, we'll actually teach you how to configure this. So this is a hardware device, but you can also get virtualized applications of firewall. Okay, so basically instead of actually having a physical device, you have a virtualized instance of something just like this, but in the virtualized world. Okay, and FortiGate is not the only thing. So if we actually look for firewalls, or let's go look for hardware firewalls, you can see here's another one, WatchGuard. Cisco has the ASAs. Again, if you keep on studying with Cisco, you have the potential learning about some of these ASAs. And there's many, okay? There's many different types of firewalls, hardware-based firewalls, Juniper, etc., etc. That's where these external and internal firewalls would be. Okay, they're specialized devices. They cost a lot more than your average, than the firewall you have on your system, because the one on your system is free with the operating system. Okay, you'll learn that. But these ones cost a lot more, and they would have a lot more functionality. They would have better performance because they're not just inspecting the traffic that's coming in and out of one computer, they're inspecting the traffic that's coming in and out of your whole network. So if we had, you're probably wondering, why do we have two of these firewalls? Because in between these two firewalls in this diagram, there's what's called a perimeter network. Okay, perimeter network. So have you guys ever heard of the term perimeter network before? Some of you, but most of you shaking your head. Have you heard of the term DMZ before? Yeah, a lot more nodding their heads. You haven't, but DMZ, if you haven't heard of it in the form of an IT word, you probably heard of it in the news. You might have heard of it. There's a big DMZ between North and South Korea. It stands for demilitarized zone. So basically, it's a no man's land where, no one goes in there to keep a buffer between, one side and another side. Well, this is our IT term. Is a perimeter network. That's Microsoft terminology, but most of the world use the term DMZ or DMZ, demilitarized zone. So what does that mean? It means this is a part of your network. You control it, you administer it, you set it up, and you do everything else to it, but it's an area that you don't trust. Why don't you trust it? Because what would you put in the perimeter network? You would put in servers that provides a resource to the internet. Okay, what does that mean? That means if I've got a web server, I wouldn't put it on my internal network, I'll put it here. If I've got a mail server, I wouldn't put it necessarily on my internal network, I'll put it here. Anything that needs to communicate or needs to provide a service to the internet, I would put here. Okay, so why would I put it there, not here? Because obviously if my internet clients are in the internet, they need to reach these services and be allowed through this external firewall. Well, this external firewall has rules, like all firewalls do, and the rules of this external firewall might be a little bit more lenient, meaning they'll allow these external clients to access web server, DNS server, mail server, etc., etc. Okay, but if, let's say, the worst comes to worst, some highly motivated, super skilled, intruder compromises a server in here, as in they take it over. Okay, worst case scenario, they fully compromise it and they own the computer and they are in charge of that computer. So if they are totally in control of this computer, basically from that computer, they can do anything they like to this network. Yes, that's true. And that means every other server that's in here or every other service in there now is big chance of being compromised as well. But guess what? Luckily, we have the secondary firewall. This firewall is going to be a lot more restrictive as far as what goes in, because now when we're expecting none of the communication to go in here, are we? We're expecting internal clients to go out, yes? So that's a directional. So our rules, once we do the worksheet, are directional. Inbound rules and outbound rules. So therefore, this file will be set up to allow traffic from internal network to access the perimeter network and the internet. It would not be set up to allow internet or perimeter network traffic to go in. Not much anyway. So therefore, even if this network totally gets compromised, we're still sort of safe back here behind the secondary internal firewall again. You get me, guys? So basically this area, we control it, but we're sort of almost like it's a sacrificial lamb, if you like. Yeah, if they do end up taking it over because we're providing this service to the internet, we're still safe. But what's even better than that is what, not even better, but what if the intruder is not on the internet? Okay, what if the intruder is not on the internet? Obviously, if it's not on the internet, we significantly reduce the possibility. So what if the intruder is on your internal network? What if there's one of your colleagues is just a little bit more techie, a little more knowledgeable, and they want to snoop around? Well, what if they could just access all your shares, all your resources, and control? There's no, like I said last time, there's no one solution that protects you against everything and anything. But it's like I said to my other class, I think, security is like Shrek. Okay, a bit corny. Do you get what I'm saying, guys? Yeah, Shrek is like an onion. It's got layers if you watch that movie. And obviously security is not about one thing protecting you against everything. It's about all the layers that protects you, each layer protecting you against something. And when you put it all together, hopefully they give you enough of a protection that protects you against most threats, if not all. Okay, so that's the idea. So basically, we've got this as a layer, this is a layer. Now we've got this host firewall as a further additional layer. So this host firewall is not one of those corporate firewalls or hardware firewalls that we just spoke about. This is actually part of your computer. Okay, and obviously this host firewall, you can get various ones installed that you can purchase or download. For example, if you purchase something like Norton 360, it will have antivirus, it will have intrusion detection, it will have some sort of firewall. Okay, that's fine. That's something you go off and get additionally. But by default, Windows 10 has some of these features already. Okay, let's have a look at those. So what is a firewall? So on your Windows 10, we've sort of shown you that the other day. Remember I said a firewall is there meant to block traffic. And you notice that by default, it was blocking our ping traffic. Have you heard of that? Did you remember that? So it's blocking out ping traffic. Why might you think that it's actually blocking the ping traffic by default? Denial of service, yeah, possibly. But probably more importantly, anything else. Like, let's think about it. If you want to, let's say the internet or the whole network is a wild west with all sorts of baddies. Do you want to be that big shiny bank that exists somewhere in the wild west? Everyone can see you and target you, and you're the beacon where everyone is drawn to you. You probably don't want to be that person, especially when you don't have the budget to protect yourself. Okay, what you want to be is you want to be that guy that goes under the radar. No one notices you, no one knows you even exist, no one's heard of you, no one's will take any notice of you. So by not replying to pings to computers, you're sort of hiding, aren't you? And that's why it's by default blocking you from responding to a ping. And you're probably going, oh, that's inconvenient because now I can't use my network diagnostic to test that. That's why when I test my network, I don't necessarily ping a host computer. I ping something like Google. They're that big shiny beacon that everyone wants to drawn to, and they're obviously by doing that, they're opening themselves up to be the one to take down. So they'll ignore you guys, hopefully. So by blocking that ping, we are what's called stealth, and that's the best way to be. Okay, on the internet, there's no point trying to be out there if you can't protect yourself adequately. So basically, we've seen this before. You notice that there's actually domain, private, and guest or public. They're what's called network profiles. Okay, so what does that mean? That means I can have different firewall rules based on what network profile this network is. So let me give you an example. If you've got a laptop, I see a few of you have. You might have connected your Wi-Fi network at home. You might have go to work and connect to that Wi-Fi network. You come to TAFE, you connect to that network. You go to somewhere like Gloria Jeans or another coffee shop, you connect to their public network. But if I were you, I'll be thinking, not all of these networks are the same, are they? Well, the one at home I'm in charge of, and it's really my network. So do I trust it? Probably should, because I'm in charge of it, right? So that might be what's called a private network. Like your workplace, okay, your computer might be part of Active Directory domain. So therefore that will be what's called a domain network. But if you go somewhere like the airport or a hotspot, public hotspot, well, yeah, you'll be silly if you trusted that network, because who knows who's connected. Okay, so basically we might configure, when we join that network, we might specify that as a public network. Okay, remember what I said? I can have different rules, different firewall rules for different networks. So therefore at home, I might want to share my files with my friends and family. So I might open up give myself rules to share files and respond to ping. Okay. On the domain, definitely share files. Also need to authenticate to Active Directory. Need to also maybe have other communication which is specific to being on a domain. So different firewall rules again. And then finally on the public guest network, I'm thinking probably not much allow rules to come in, inbound rules that is, maybe only rules that goes out. You get me? So you can see that you don't have to constantly be fiddling with your firewall. You can just configure a different firewall for the different types of networks you might be encountering. So network location profiles, that's what they're called. Okay, Windows 10 uses network location awareness to identify connected networks uniquely. Networks can be classified as one of the three: domain, public, or private. So the public one is the scary one, whereas your domain and your private are usually what's more trusted. Then we have this Windows Defender firewall with advanced security. So we'll do this in our worksheet and we'll give you an example in a minute. But so basically you can see that there's actually inbound and outbound rules. Okay, so remember we said the direction is important. So inbound means connections or traffic going to your computer, Okay, so that's probably most of the rules you want to configure. Outbound rule is rules are your computer, things on your computer, services, programs, users using communication going out of your computer. You're probably going, well, why would I want to restrict anything going out of my computer? Can you think of any reasons? Yeah, but how would they grab information if they never came in? So, yeah, well, things that the communication that originates from your computer. So it's not someone else outside communicating and getting something. It's a service or user or program that's on your computer and wants to communicate out. Yeah, or something like that. What did you say? DRM, what's that? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, not only that. That's probably a legitimate reason. I was thinking more like distributed denial of service or bots. Okay. So, for example, what if you went to this website, you clicked on every link, and you accepted every offer? There's a potential you could have malware or some sort of program installed on your computer without your knowledge. So behind the scenes, it could be sending information, privacy information from your computer to somewhere else. A bit like what you said, but now not legitimately, without your knowledge, and possibly then using your computer in another attack of someone else. So most importantly for us is the inbound rules, but secondly we need to also understand what the outbound rules are. And next thing is the connection security rules. So basically this is where you can allow specific programs to communicate from your computer. Okay, it's not just ports and IP addresses anymore. It's actually specific programs that's on your computer. Like you might have what's an Outlook as your mail program, and also some other mail program, but you might configure the rules so that only Outlook is allowed to communicate. Okay, and then you've got monitoring, which is where you can see what's going on. Obviously, hopefully everything's working the way you've configured and you want it to work. Let's actually talk about how a firewall works in general, okay? So let's talk about, there's a couple of different types of firewalls, okay? There's what's called packet filtering firewalls, and that's probably the simplest, and it's probably one that's on everything. Every device these days has probably a packet filtering firewall. There's stateful inspection. There's an application layer filtering. Okay, let's talk about each of them in a very briefly. So, you guys are doing the Cisco, aren't you? Have you learned what a packet is? All right. So if you've learned what a packet is, this is basically what's in a packet. Okay. So your IPv4, IPv6, it's one of those packets, and basically you know that an IP address, on a packet there's a source and destination IP address, right? Where it's coming from, where it's going to. All right. Besides that, there's also a port number. There's a protocol type and then port number. That's what's in a packet. So when we say a packet filtering, it's filtering. Okay, the idea is filtering, letting some things through and blocking other things based on the packet. So therefore, we just listed a couple of things that's in a packet, not the actual data, but the actual things that's in the header. That's destination IP address, source IP address, protocol, and the port numbers. So packet filtering uses any of those combinations to filter and allow traffic through or not through. Okay, question?
Does it filter out stuff like MAC addresses?
No, MAC address is not used. Can you tell me why? Okay, can anyone think of why MAC addresses are not used here? High up or? It's layer 2, isn't it? Okay, layer 2. So if you guys are doing Cisco, so physical layer, then data link layer is the layer 2. That's where MAC addresses live. Okay, and then layer 3 is network layer, and what's applications right at the top. Yeah, transport layer. Yep. So those two, transport and network layer, is where the packets live, okay? Yeah, so I have to go through my acronym in my head. Phil Donahue, never televise sick people anymore. Yeah, physical, data link, network, yeah, all that. But basically what you're saying is MAC address is down here, Ethernet, okay? So the other thing is that MAC addresses are only on the LAN. Every time they cross a router, the MAC address is stripped away and new MAC address is put in. Okay, so it's called decapsulation and encapsulation, if you've heard of that term. Okay, so the MAC address is per LAN, only on that LAN segment. So therefore, if this communication was from the internet somewhere, going to our computer, that Ethernet MAC address is not going to be anything relevant to what it started off with. In fact, the source MAC address is going to be my router, and the destination MAC address is going to be my computer. Sounds legit, but it's what's inside of it that's not legit. The source IP address might be from hackerworld.com or something like that, and the destination address is my IP address, okay? So basically what I'm saying is packet filtering allows us to filter based on source destination IP addresses, the protocol, whether it's UDP or TCP or UDP, connectionless or connection oriented, and then the port number. And the port number is probably the most important one out of those, okay, as much as anything else, but probably as important. So if an IP address, we sort of equated an IP address to be like your home address, didn't we, last time? We said to get to your house, you give me your address, and I find your house on a GPS, and I go there. An IP address is that of a computer. we find that computer with the IP address. Doesn't matter where on the internet. But when you get to the computer, just like when I get to your house, you might not be living there by yourself. Okay, most of us live with other people. So when I knock on the door, what do I do? If I was there to visit you, what do I do? I'll ask for your name, right? Say, hey, can I speak to Reese or whoever? So therefore, I'll get the right person. So I'm identifying the right occupant of that house. So if you like to equate that now, go back to our, what's the analogy? If we use the IP address to get to the computer, we knock on the front door of the computer and we say, hey, I want to talk to HTTP or the web server. Well, how do I identify HTTP? Well, it's port 80. Okay, so in my request, it's for port 80. So I'm just requesting the HTTP server or the web server there. Or in another case, I might be saying, hey, I want to talk to DNS server. Okay, I identify DNS server by using the port 53. These are what's called well-known ports. The term well-known means it's a standard. Everyone uses these ports so that we can all operate and interoperate together. Okay, so there's no point me using, for example, web server. My web server is going to be port 81. Yours is going to be port 82, and etc. etc. How would anyone really know how things work if we are using all sorts of weird numbers? So well-known ports are well-defined, as in they're the ones we use as a standard across the board. So therefore, anyone who types in the URL on their browser will go to port 80, not any other port. Okay, if we want to use a different port, it would not be a standard port, and it may not be accessible by people who don't know these specific port number. So there's some examples, some popular ones: HTTP webs and HTTPS web service websites. Okay, FTP file transport protocol, SMTP email, simple mail transport protocol. POP3, that's another email post office protocol. DNS, that's that DNS resolution queries, and zone transfers, depending on whether it's TCP or UDP. Okay, UDP is for queries, and TCP is for zone transfers. Okay, SNMP. Yeah, this is what's a network monitoring querying port. But if you're not sure about what port is what, do a search. Okay, so list of well-known port numbers. So basically the port numbers from 1 to 1024 or thereabouts are what's called well-known ports, and they have a defined function. There's more ports than that, that's for sure. Okay, there's a hell of a lot more ports. After that, there's user-defined ports or non-defined ports. So you can use them for other things. Sorry, ports. So basically, if we're talking about the TCP/IP in a packet, besides having the IP address of where we're going to, or the protocol, whether it's TCP or UDP, these ports identify the service that when you get to the computer. Okay, so these are not physical ports. They're just like when I go to this computer and I ask for a service, and if I want to ask for the web server, I will use this port 80 to request the web service. Okay, so basically the ports identify the actual program or service that's running on the computer you want to communicate with. It's not just communicate on everything, it's communicate with a specific program. That's what its job is there to do. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, good. Hopefully it does. You'll learn a lot more about that in the CIRS6 subject, the Cisco subject. But I think I gave you a bit of a basic understanding, hopefully. So if you look at this, you can see that there's port 1 to basically 1,000 something. They're well-known ports, okay? So for example, that POP3 110, I can have a look at it. It's post office protocol. This is what it does and whatever. It doesn't actually list every port on this particular website, so that's not necessarily the best one. There's plenty of them. Plenty of websites. So if one doesn't give you the number, maybe this one will. So this one gives you a whole heap of numbers and tells you what it is. Some of them are
Some of them are definitely recognizable. For example, port 21 FTP, port 22 SSH, 23 Telnet. Maybe they become recognizable to some of you guys, but a lot of them are unrecognizable. Okay, so to be honest, some of these are not ever used by your computer, but some of them are being used behind the scenes without your knowledge anyway. Okay, so really ports are there to identify a service on a computer when you're trying to communicate with that computer. So therefore, if I have a web server, my computer is a web server, I want to make sure that my firewall rules allows communication on port 80, don't I? Because that's my function of my server. If I stop communication on port 80, it means my web server wouldn't work. Wouldn't be able to respond to, or people wouldn't be able to get to my web server. Whereas if I'm not a web server, why would I open up or allow port 80? So remember that principle of least privilege? Anything that's running, anything that's allowed, any privilege you give or authorization you give to someone who doesn't need it, it's a vector for attack. It opens up what's called a surface area for attack. Okay, so therefore the best systems, or the most hardened systems, minimize everything. They minimize what programs are running, minimize what ports are open, minimize what is allowed, so that only the specific thing for the specific job for the specific function is allowed. You get me? Any more can be compromised, used to be compromised. So knowing that, knowing what well-known ports are now, hopefully a bit of understanding, let's actually have a quick look, okay? So let's have a bit of a play. So let me see if I've got anything else on my computer. Okay, no. I've basically got the Windows 10 and a full clone. So let's actually go to my Windows 10 and I'll log in. And this is my full clone, and I might as well log into my full clone as well. So before I can even test any of these things or demonstrate any of these things, I need to make sure that these two computers actually can talk to each other, are on the same network, and everything is configured correctly. All right, so basically if I hover on my little network icon on the bottom of my VMware workstation, it should sort of pop up what network I'm on. It's on host only, this full clone. So in order for two computers to be on the same network, they must be plugged into the same switch. Okay, so this must be also host only to be on the same network. Let's have a look. That's NAT. So immediately that tells me that's wrong. Okay, so that's okay. What I'll do is I'll just change this. In fact, I might just go crazy today. I'll put both of them on bridged. And that way you guys can use your computers or your physical computers to actually test some things for me. So I'm going to make them both bridged. So if you remember from last lesson, we said that besides being on the same physical network or plugged into the same switch, they also have to have an IP address which is sort of on the same subnet. So now they're bridged, they must have a IP address which fits into the physical network. So I know my physical machine here is on the physical network. So does anyone remember how I find out an IP address on my computer? Command prompt, what do I do there? Yep, so that's right. To start a command prompt, you click on start or you press the Windows key, you type CMD and enter, and you'll get what's called a command prompt, okay? Some people call it a DOS prompt, it doesn't matter. And I'm just gonna quickly increase the size of the fonts like I did last time, so it's a little bit easier to see. And if I use the IP config, that's a command prompt command, if you remember. That tells me the IP address configuration, basically. And if you look at this, this is the Ethernet adapter, which is my physical adapter. It's connected to TAFE SA, which is where the network I'm on. This is the IP address. This is the subnet mask. It's a weird one. because it's not that nicely with 255, 255, something 0 or something like that.
128 0, that means the last decimal place that has to be below 128.
Well, in this case, depends on where we're at, because it could be that could be above 128 or below 128. You'll find that, for example, that room next door, A103, has the same subnet mask and has the same 3 octets, but that is all the IP addresses are above 128, whereas this is all below. Basically, with this subnet mask, we've split this network into 2. Remember how we had the 255, 255, 255.0? That's 254 IP addresses. By having this subnet mask, we've just split it in half. There's a top half and a bottom half. Okay, bottom half goes from 1 to 127. The top half goes from 129 to 254. Okay. So now we can see that that's the bottom half because that's less than 128. My IP address here. Okay. Guys, get that? Yep. All right. So let's check that out. Check out my. Okay, so this is that question. Do you want to be discoverable? So if you're, like I said, this is where you choose. This is where if you're at home, yes, good, no problems, because you probably want to share stuff with your computers at home. But if you're at that, coffee shop Wi-Fi or the airport, this is where you click no. Okay, so we recommend allowing this on your home and work networks, but not on the public one. So right now we're on a work network, right? So I'm going to click yes. And same with this one, I believe. Let's actually find out our IP address, ipconfig. And I can see, first of all, that's getting something from TAFE, which is good. You can see 7, that's sort of, the first 3 octets are the same. This last one is different, and it's in the same half as my other one. So it's a little bit complicated, our physical network here. The ultimate test is that if I can ping Google or not. If I can ping Google, it means that everything on my network, virtual and physical, is working correctly and configured correctly. You get me? So I do that all the time. You might notice in our worksheets, we ping Google all the time. So let's do it from both computers. And this is .3. So it's a different number. It's a unique number, but you can see what the first 3 parts of it is consistent with the other computer. And again, we'll ping google.com. No problems at all. Okay. Let me have a quick look at what is the name of my computer. So I can right click on this PC and go to properties. And my computer is W10 client 1. Okay. That's the name of the computer. That's fine. I just need to know that. Let's actually go to our control panel. So in this case, the control panel is on the desktop, so it's easy, but it's not necessarily always there. We can get to it any way we want. We go to system security, firewall, and we can actually go through the advanced firewall, which allows or denies. So this is where we're talking about with the private and public. This computer is not in the domain. So these are all the rules or applications. Do we allow them on the private network or the public network, etc. All right, so if we click on this is the UAC. That allows us to sort of allows us to make changes by elevating our privileges at that point in time. We can allow other apps. So for example, I might go, hey, I'm going to go and allow calculator. I know calculator doesn't actually do any communications over the network that I know of, but that's a program. Here's calculator or calc. One's old, one's new, basically. Let me just click add. And now this is the Windows calculator. It's saying it's allowing this Windows calculator to communicate on the public network. But I want to allow it to go on the private network, but not the public network. You see, that's a simple checkbox. This is not using packet filtering now. This is another type of filtering, which is specifically looking at the programs that it's allowed on my computer. So let's actually go and look at advanced settings. This is where we bring up that advanced firewall. So remember, we've got inbound rules. This is my Windows calculator that I've just used that other method to create. There's my outbound rules. If you remember, inbound rules are traffic coming into us. And this is where probably most of your firewall is going to do its job. Okay? This is where you allow or deny traffic from other computers to your computer. All right, so let's find something we know. So there's a whole heap of things, and to be honest, you probably don't know half of these. And if you really are interested in any of these, all you have to do is actually look at one of these. Look at this one. Let's look at this one, okay? There's a bit of a description. Let's have a look at the properties. Description: packet to big error message are sent from any node that packet traverses, which is unable to be forwarded to the next link. So it tells you a little bit about it, okay? You notice that this is a predefined rule. So there's heaps of predefined rules. Microsoft predefined these things so things work for you. If just imagine if nothing worked for you by default, you'll be saying Windows 10 is a rubbish operating system, nothing works. But in reality, it could be that there's not the rules that allow it. So by default, there's these predefined rules just to get some things to work at the minimum level. But let's find something else, okay? So let's find something else, okay? So let's look at file and print sharing. Okay, so this file and print sharing. So as the name suggests, it allows people to access our file shares. All right, let's actually test this out. So right now we'll go to my, well, let's create another folder. There's already a folder there, probably used by another lecturer. Let's create a folder called share. If you remember from our previous website, you right click, properties, sharing, advanced sharing, share this folder, permissions, full control to everyone. And we'll learn why we do that later when we talk about permissions and NTFS permissions. But now if we go to my other computer, let's actually have a look at. So if you remember, this is actually a full clone, isn't it? So that's what name says it's a full clone. Well, if it's a full clone, the name of this computer is going to be exactly the same as the name of the other computer, which means there's going to be a name conflict. We can't use names. So I might just quickly change this so we're not confused. We're going to change this to full clone instead, just so that they have different names on the network. Because in Windows, that's what's called a NetBIOS name, and we actually can use NetBIOS name to access services or shares on other computer, as well as IP addresses, because the NetBIOS name gets resolved to our IP address. So I'm just changing the name so we don't have a duplicate name error, or which might cause silly little things not to work. Okay, let's log in. So we're back on the full clone. I'm logging in with the same user account, you notice. Okay, so we're not even worried about users today. We'll talk about users in the future, but last lesson you might notice that if you have different users, you might have different permissions if they create the same user accounts on each of the computer. So now that we have a separate computer name, sorry, I don't even know. I forgot the name of the computer. So what was it? W10 client 1. So if you remember last lesson, we said that if we type in the IP address or the name of the computer, and we hit enter, we should be able to see the shares. Okay, so this is not showing me coming up, so I wonder why is that. Let's try the IP address for a second. So because it works for IP addresses as well. ipconfig, so 28.3. You know why? It's probably because there's someone else on this network who might have used the same virtual machine because it's downloaded from the nope. All right, so let's work out why. Here it is. I think that's it. Yeah, there's share. For some reason I couldn't just type it in for some reason, but there's the share folder. Hopefully it's this same one. Did I create a share? There it is, yep. But I can't access it for some reason right now. But yeah. I shouldn't even be able to see it if the thing's not showing it. But basically, if we look at this rule, which is actually, let's look at the rule. So this one is inbound rule for file and print sharing, allows server message block transmissions and receiving via named pipes. So basically, this is the rule that allows us to access the share. Okay, but if we look at the ports and protocols, it's TCP, which is fine, and the port is 445, which is for that specific purpose. If we look at the scope, it means from any computer to the local, this is the local computer. Local computers, any IP address that the local computer has, and it's only from people from the local subnet. Let's actually just change it to any addresses. But the other thing is, you notice that it's not actually enabled. See, all of these things with the green, that means it's actually turned on. This is there, it's just sitting there idle, not doing anything at all. So let's actually enable it. Let's cancel that. Let's retry it. Okay, now you notice that, hey, I've just got into the share. Now I've just created a new document, haven't I? What did I do? Absolutely nothing except for enabling that rule. Okay? That rule there was not turned on, which therefore meant it wasn't working. If it's not turned on, it's just like your door's now shut. Okay, people's knocking on the door, but you know, you're not letting them through. So to prove that, let's actually turn it off again. Disable rule. Let's close this off and try to reinitiate that communication. Oops, wrong one. Oops, it's still seeing it for some reason. Okay, let's actually do something even worse. Let's create a new rule. New rule. Let's create our own rule. It's based on ports. Okay, we learned that port number was 445 for file sharing, right? Do you remember seeing that? All right, so basically if we go back to this one, if you remember, I opened up the properties and I looked at the protocols and I said, look, it's 445. So if that is for the SMB sharing. So if you look at 445, where is it? 445, it's a Microsoft Directory Service and SMB, basically. So let's actually create our own rule. So now we'll create a new rule. It's based on port numbers, and it's a TCP. So remember, again, I said it was TCP, wasn't I? This could be all ports, but in this example, we're going to use 445 instead. Are we going to allow this rule or allow this connection? In this case, I want to block it. Next, is it going to be blocked, and which network is it going to be blocked on? Okay, so normally I would say just the public network, but today for this demonstration, we're going to choose all networks. We can go change it later if we wanted to. That means it doesn't matter which network type I'm connected to, it's going to be blocked. And what am I going to call it? No file share. So give yourself a bit of a description if you wanted to. Make the names sensible. And you notice that it's right there. It's a sort of a, it's like a no smoking sign, which that's that symbol. But if we do that now, and hopefully I'm accessing the right computer, if I'm going to go to network, where's my Windows 10 client? See, I'm double clicking on it. I'm getting a sort of a different response already. I'm not actually going to get into it because that actual block rule is preventing me from exploring or browsing any shares. Okay, that's what it's doing. All right, so let's get back to our other computer and let's actually go to monitoring. Let's actually look at this. We can monitor, we can have basically a sort of a dashboard. So it's saying, right now it's saying our public profile is active, which means that our computer is actually connected to what it thinks is a public profile. So these other two are there, but they're not being used right this second. My computer's only got a single network card. It's designated this as a public network. So if we look at the firewall, we can see these are all the rules that's in effect. Okay, this was all the rules in total. That's what's coming in. This is actually all the rules that's actually in effect right now. Some of those were disabled. We can look at, there's nothing here to look at, but you can see there's different rules for inbound and outbound. But like I said, the one that I will concentrate on to start off with is the inbound. That is what services can other computers access of mine. But having said that, there's one more thing that I haven't really, you know how I've just configured that configured that address, configured that rule. So remember how we said packet filtering? So we've really just used 445 and TCP/IP as the things we're filtering. But in reality, we've also used IP addresses. In this case, is any IP address. Or we can actually add individual IP addresses or whole networks. So that's not blocking everyone, it's blocking just these people or these IP addresses or ranges. Yeah, this is where it's coming from. Okay, remote ones. So I'll cancel that for now. But the thing is, if you're using IP addresses, which IP addresses are we talking about? Okay, if you're configuring rules based on IPv4 IP addresses, right? But don't forget there's IPv6, isn't there? So you might be configuring the best rules in the whole universe for IPv4 because that's what you're using and that's what you're thinking of. But what about the IPv6? Did you configure any rules on that? Or are they just using the default rules? So if I'm not using IPv6, I can actually go to my network card, Ethernet properties. I can just IPv6 and just turn it off. Again, going back to our principle of least privilege. I'm not using IPv6. Why have IPv6 on? If I have IPv6 on and I don't remember it and I'm not thinking about it, and what if I just leave it open accidentally? You get what I'm saying? So you could just turn it off like that. So I also talked about other types of filtering, and to be honest, we're not going to cover that, and that's beyond the scope of what our Windows firewall can do. But there's also stateful inspection. So basically, stateful inspection means who started the conversation. Okay, have you ever heard of the term, adults telling children only speak when spoken to? Yeah, you heard of that? It's a bit like that, because basically when we try to get a resource, our computers in here, internal computers. So let's go back to that original thing. If our internal computers wants to get a resource from the internet, that's okay, isn't it? But what if that same server wants to access our computer from the internet? That's not okay, is it? So it's sometimes okay and sometimes not okay, because when we say, hey, I want, can I please have that resource? that server on the internet is allowed to give it back to us, isn't it? So in that situation, that server can actually send back the information we're after and give it to our computer. That's okay. But what if we didn't ever ask for this information and this server is on the internet and it's saying, hey, would you like this information? Is that okay? No. Okay, stateful inspection is where if an internal computer asks for something, then the reply is allowed back in. Okay, so it's inspecting whether the reply is related to the state of a communication. Whereas if this computer never asks for any resources and this other computer on the internet just wants to talk to it, no, that's not right. We never asked you for anything. Why are you talking to us? Stop harassing us. Okay? So that's stateful inspection. That's something that happens on these internal firewalls. Then we also mentioned the application layer filtering. So remember how we talked about filtering based on the ports and MAC addresses? Yeah, go for it. Remember we talked about filtering based on ports, IP addresses, and all that kind of stuff? We never said anything about the data, did we? What if this guy inside here was actually going to the internet and accessing resources? Like, let's say they went to Google or went to Facebook. They downloaded the pictures, no problems, that's allowed. But what if they went to naughty.com on the internet? Well, maybe that shouldn't be allowed. So application filtering allows us to look at the data that's been transported and see if it fits our rules. Okay, let's say we could have a whole range of words that we don't want to allow, file types. Application filtering could also include virus scan of the data that's been transported. Okay, so we're not going to talk about that in this subject again, but that's something to be aware of, and that's the different types of filtering. The one we're worried about is what's called packet filtering. Next thing we're going to talk about is what is IPSec. IPSec, or IP security as it sounds, is a suite of protocol that allows for secure encrypted communication between two computers over an unsecured network. Have you heard of the term encryption? Yeah, we spoke about it when we talked about encrypting the virtual machines, right? That's where we scrambled the data so it's not readable unless you have a key. So IPSec basically allows us to scramble our communication so anyone who captures it can't read it. But when it gets to the destination it's meant to, they also have a key and they can unscramble or decrypt it. And it's sort of saying it's securing communication between in a unsecure network. Well, think of your airport Wi-Fi, that's unsecure. Anyone can access it, couldn't they? Think of the whole internet. That's unsecure. So just imagine you're sending your vital secure data across a network where anyone could have access to it. I compare it like who's been to the Adelaide Oval to watch cricket or football? You heard of the term streakers? Yeah, so if your data is being sent across the internet, unencrypted, it's like a streaker running through the middle of the oval. All your private bits are there for anyone to see. Just like all your private data is there for anyone to look at if they wanted to. So encryption basically encapsulates your data and protects it from being seen. It's like that streaker with the blurred image all over him so no one can see him even though he's doing it. You know, he's running across the oval and they can see your data going through the internet, but they can't really see what's in it. Okay, all that data is obscured or encrypted in this case. All right, 2 goals, packet encryption. IPSec has 2 goals, packet encryption, mutual authentication between systems. That's interesting, mutual authentication. Like, when you guys log into this computer, is that mutual authentication? No, it's not really. It's the computer asking who you are. Do you have a username and password? Do you ever ask, are you a secure computer? Okay, so because I'm sure you've heard of all those phishing scams and stuff like that. If you clicked on one of those emails that actually said, oh, please, reset your password, and you just click on it, and you go, no problems, I'll reset my password, and all seems legit. But in the background, they've captured your data, haven't they? Captured what your new password is. But what if we had something like mutual authentication? I might say, hey, how about you prove who you are, first of all? I'm not going to deal with you until you prove who you are. Okay? So basically, mutual authentication is both confirming each other's identity. A bit like those spy movies when you're supposed to meet your spy in the park at late at night. You don't just meet anyone, you just say a code word, don't you? Like it mainly rains in Spain, and they say something back like the ducks fly south or something like that, and then you know that's the code word you're meant to give each other, and you've mutually authenticated each other, haven't you? That's what mutual authentication is. So basically that protects against the man in the middle attack, someone who's pretending to be someone legit and trying to pass themselves off as the legit person while passing and transferring your data in the middle so that you don't see anything awry, but at the end of the day, they've captured your information. IPSec enables sending and receiving computers to send secure data to each other. Secures network traffic by using encryption and data signing. Uses policies. Policies are just another word for rules. Rules that define the type of traffic that IPSec examines, how the traffic is secured and encrypted, and how IPSec peers are authenticated. So this is something to know of, not something we're going to do. We will do in the future when we set up VPNs with IPSec, for example, and other things, okay? But here, just know of it. What are connection security rules? So just with the IPSec, just be aware that your computer, your Windows 10 is capable of it, okay? What are connection security rules? Connection security rules involves authenticating two computers before they begin communication. That's mutual authentication, isn't it? Securing information that's sent between the two computers. Well, yeah, that's encryption, really. Using key exchange authentication, data integrity, and data encryption. How firewall rules and connection rules are related. Firewall rules allow traffic through but do not secure the traffic. Connection security rules can secure the traffic, but it depends on the firewall rule to allow traffic through the firewall. So there's some authentication options. So when we create a new security rule wizard, we can request authentication for inbound and outbound connections, require authentication for inbound connections and request authentication for outbound connections, or require authentication for inbound and outbound connections. So these are a bit of description. Like I've gone through this a little bit quickly. That's because it's there to know, good to know of, but it's not essential for this subject. And we'll cover a lot of this in future subjects. So if we're looking at monitoring connections, so we can look at if there's active connection between two computers, we can see that it's here, and we can have a look at that. Let's actually see if we can do that. So if we go back to here, if you remember, we have this rule that's actually blocking our communication, or blocking the file sharing communication. Let's actually disable that rule. By disabling that rule, hopefully we can now cancel this, close this, and there's 10 client. Now we can see the share again, we can go in again. Let's even open this up, type some stuff in there, and hopefully, have we got any sessions? No, we don't have anything listed here, unfortunately. But it further emphasizes that that rule actually turning it off allows that again. But yeah, if you do have an active connection, in this case it's a Kerberos connection between this computer and this computer, you can look at the bit of the details. I think for us, even though it's accessing it, it's not actually actively accessing it at that point in time. I'm sure this is well documented. What is malware? So if you've never heard of the term, just break up the word into halves. Mal means bad. Ware is like software, hardware. It's something to it's a program. Okay, in this case, program that's on your computer. So it's a bad program. If you want to put it in simple language, malware, bad program. Forms of malware include computer viruses. Okay, viruses are just programs that does bad things. They could be as simple as something that deletes all your files to something as complicated as participating in some sort of botnet that attacks other computers. It could be computer worms. Worms are viruses. Well, what's the difference? Worms actually is a program that consumes resources. A bit like if you get worms in your gut. I'm sure as a kid, some of you might have got worms. They sort of consume your resources of your human body. In this case, computer worms consume your computer resources, such as your CPU, memory, all that kind of stuff. Trojan horses, basically that gives an attacker a backdoor into your computer. A bit like back in the day when those Greeks snuck inside the Trojan horse and took over Troy. Okay, so it's a backdoor into your computer. Ransomware, it's a bit like you probably heard of plenty of examples on the news where your whole computer gets infected with ransomware. They use encryption now to encrypt your data. What if that's super important data to you? Well, they'll say, hey, give us money and we'll give you the keys to a town and encrypt it. We don't just want any money. We know you can trace that. We want bitcoins. Go set up your account on this, buy some bitcoins, and send it to me. That's what they'll do. Okay. So you might have heard of that happening a couple of years ago to the British health system. Okay. I'm not exactly sure about the details now because it's been a bit of a while, but it was big news. It's affecting the public health system in Britain. Okay. There's spyware. Spyware is a form of malware because instead of doing something bad, like as in damaging your computers, consuming resources, or giving backdoors to other people, it's actually just sending your private data to someone else. Whether that's your passwords, whether that's actually your browser history, whether that's actually turning on your camera, etc., etc. Okay, so these are all sorts of things. How does one get malware? So what do you guys know? Sorry? Pop-ups, like from where? That's websites. So basically, if you get pop-ups and you click on them, you can get malware. Any other ways? Email links, yeah. So yeah, basically, if you get an email that has this link and you just click on it, potentially you can install it. What were you going to say? Dodgy downloads. That's right. A lot of them expect you to do something to help them. Okay, you go somewhere, you download this trial version of Windows 10, let's say. But are you downloading it from Microsoft or are you downloading it from another site? Besides getting a trial version of Windows 10, what else are you getting? You see what I'm saying? Any other ways? No, okay. What about like just using USB sticks? Okay, so for example, I bring a USB stick to TAFE, I plug it in, but the last person who used it had infected this computer with a virus. That virus might actually be designed to spread itself through removable media. So one of the whole points of viruses is that it's designed to replicate, and one way is to go store itself on more storage. Okay, and there's probably many others, like mainly to do with the internet these days. Okay, with programs, a lot of them require you to do something. They're pretty tricky. I've received many emails where it says, there's ones like, if you've inherited $6 million, click on this link or something to claim it. That's easy enough to spot. Everyone will spot that a mile away. I've had this one where it's like a legal company, legal firm. The thing it says is our client has now brought legal action against you and your company. And to see the details of this legal action, click on this link. Now, all of a sudden, that's a little bit different to what you normally hear, right? So you're going, what? What did I do? Why have they got some legal case against me? And before you think too hard, you click on that link. That's what they want to do, don't they? So let's actually keep on going. So because of malware, we have antiviruses. Like I said, There's plenty of antiviruses that you can buy and install or even get for free. But Windows itself has an antivirus program, and that's called Windows Defender. And these computers here are a little bit out of date, but let's see if we have them. So let's go to settings. We'll go to updates and security, Windows Defender. It's a little bit different. We can have a look at the version, and let's use it. Here it is, and basically there's updates. So this is a older version. The one you've built yourself has a different version of Windows Defender, but it's fairly similar. But you need to update the virus signatures or signatures. Okay, you can check for updates, and you can see it was checked today already. The virus definition is this. Why is it important to check for updates? Yeah, basically there's constantly new ones being discovered. And so if you want your antivirus to, it's a bit like getting your vaccination, isn't it? If you want your body to be vaccinated against all these diseases, you need to get these vaccinations. These updates are like that vaccination for your computer. Get vaccinated, they'll recognize these threats as threats, and they'll protect you. If we go home, we can do a scan now. We can do a full scan or quick scan. And basically, I'll just do a quick scan. It will go through some of the typical files areas where viruses or threats are located, and it'll put something in there. Check them out. We could also go to individual files. Sorry, let's go to our computer. Let's go to this folder. It's not on this one, but let's see if it's on my real computer. So like I said, there's a little bit of a different version. I can actually, here it is, scan with Windows Defender. I can right click on a specific file. Let's say that was a file I just downloaded from this dodgy website. It probably should have caught it already while I was downloading it, but if it didn't, I can just scan it again. Okay, this is what the more current version looks like. It looks a little bit different to the other one, but does the similar things. You can check for updates. You can do a quick scan, and you can also have ransomware protection. And basically, how do we protect your files against threats like ransomware? Really, we control data folder access. We have backups. Okay, but the key thing is you can't have the backups on the same computer that you're protecting against. Two reasons: if the computer dies, the backups will die. If the computer gets encrypted, so would the backups. So you need to store them off-site, off computer at least. All right, so that's the end of my little talk. So let's see if we can get you to work through those worksheets, okay? So the worksheets will help you understand the firewalls and defend it a little bit more.